Across mountains and deserts, a line of earth and brick cuts the horizon. This is the Great Wall of China. But behind the legend stands a more complicated truth, one that begins not with a single wall, but with a single ambitious emperor, Qin Shi Huang. The myth says one emperor built one wall that has stood unbroken for 2 millennia. The facts, however, say otherwise, and they're far more dramatic. So, let's start at the beginning. In 221 BCE, Qin Shi Huang did something incredible. He unified a patchwork of warring states into a single empire. To secure his new northern frontier, he ordered the existing border defenses to be linked together. You see, many of the earlier states had already raised their own walls. Later dynasties, like the famous Ming, would rebuild and completely reimagine them. So when you think of the Great Wall, don't picture a single continuous line. Think of a network, evolving over centuries. The materials themselves tell this story. The Qin construction favored what's called rammed earth. Basically, layers of soil and gravel compacted together. This was perfect for the dry plateaus of northern China, from the Ordos region all the way to Gansu. But fast forward a few centuries to the Ming Dynasty. Their engineers used brick and stone to face and heighten many of the older stretches, especially those protecting the capital, Beijing. Different materials, different centuries, different stories. The key takeaway here? One frontier, many eras. Now let's tackle our first big myth. Myth number 1. Qin Shi Huang built the Great Wall you see today, end to end in one epic construction project. The fact is, our earliest historical records, like Sima Qian's famous Shiji, tell us that Qin's command was to connect and extend existing defenses, not to create a brand new universal wall from scratch. And archaeology backs this up. Along the dusty landscapes of Ningxia and Gansu, we find rammed earth ramparts, beacon towers, and trenches, all hallmarks of Qin and Han era techniques. So, what's verified? Qin linked a series of regional walls, creating a formidable frontier system against nomadic raids from the steppe. What's still debated is the precise extent and speed of his works, mainly because so many of those sections were rebuilt by the Han Dynasty and later restored by the Ming. So why does this distinction matter? Well, the one-sweep story completely erases centuries of brilliant engineering, shifting political strategies, and the immense local labor that made and remade the frontier over time. But it also raises a sharper question. If the Qin Wall was made of earth, why is the modern image of the Great Wall so perfectly brick and stone? A closer look at the sections most tourists visit, like Badaling and Mutianyu near Beijing, reveals the answer. These are stunning examples of Ming masonry. Their watchtowers, their crenellations, those little notches on top, were specifically designed to be used with firearms. These features belong to a gunpowder age, not the 3rd century BCE. The real Qin contribution lies much further west. Quiet, earthen ramparts that trace the contours of the dry land corridors. But those subtle dissolving stretches rarely make it onto postcards, and that really skews our collective memory. So to recap this myth, Qin began a network. The Ming Dynasty reshaped the picture, creating the monument we recognize today. All right, let's move on to myth number 2, and it's a big one. The Great Wall is visible from the moon with the naked eye. I'm sorry to burst this cosmic bubble, but the facts are pretty clear. Astronauts who have actually been up there report that from low Earth orbit, you can sometimes spot cities and highways if the light is just right. But the wall, its color and its narrow width just blend right in with the surrounding terrain. And from the moon? Absolutely no human-made structure is visible without a telescope, it's just too far. So, what's verified? Photography from space and first-hand accounts from astronauts confirm that the wall is not uniquely visible. In fact, large rivers and patterns of farmland often stand out more. What's debated? Well, under very specific rare conditions, like a low-angle sun casting long shadows over a snow-covered landscape, it's possible that short stretches might be glimpsed by a trained eye. But it's hardly the iconic unbroken ribbon snaking across the planet that people imagine. Why does this myth matter? Because inflating the wall's visibility also inflates its meaning. It turns a complex strategic frontier system into a kind of cosmic billboard for national pride. But if its fame doesn't come from being seen from space, what made the wall so visible in the world of politics back on Earth? The origins of this myth probably trace back to writers in the early 20th century, and it just got repeated in classrooms until it became common knowledge. It persisted because it's a flattering idea, and it satisfies our modern appetite for superlatives: the biggest, the longest, the most visible. But the real significance of the Great Wall doesn't need space myths. It's written in logistics, in signal fires, and in the lives of the soldiers who manned it. To recap, extraordinary on Earth, but not from the moon. This brings us to our third, and perhaps most grim myth. Qin Shi Huang buried thousands of dead workers inside the Great Wall itself. The historical chronicles do emphasize the harsh reality of corvée labor, mass conscription for imperial projects. The human cost was undeniably real and immense. However, archaeology tells a different story. Systematic excavations of Qin-era wall sections have found no evidence of burials within the wall's core. The rammed earth layers are solid, compacted soil, not filled with bodies. So what is verified? Heavy labor, injuries, and deaths were common on these remote, dangerous work sites. And we have found graves near the construction camps and quarries where these workers lived and died. What ES debated are the exact casualty numbers and whether a punitive burial, a wall burial as punishment, might have happened in rare, isolated cases. We just don't have evidence for it being a systematic practice. Why does correcting this myth matter? The bones in the wall image is a powerful, dramatic symbol of suffering, but it obscures the real, everyday systems that made the construction possible. The supply lines, the overseers, the rotations of labor crews. And those systems reveal something even more fascinating: a new, centralized state learning how to project its power over vast, difficult distances. In fact, legal texts written on bamboo slips from the Qin Han frontier mention things like food rations, tool issuance, and specific punishments for rule breaking. They paint a picture that is as much about bureaucracy as it is about a battleground. The real story isn't one of macabre masonry, but of administration under incredible strain. So the mini recap here is, there was real suffering, but it happened in the wrong place. The graves are near the work camps, not inside the wall. So, if we strip away the myths, what essential truths do we find? What does the one wall story miss? First, it misses the strategy. A wall alone never stopped a mobile cavalry force. What it did was slow down raids, funnel attackers into predictable routes, and buy precious time for field armies to respond. The real genius was the network of beacon towers. With fire by night and smoke by day, they could transmit intelligence across hundreds of miles of mountains faster than any rider. That signal web was the wall's true nervous system. Second, the myth misses the economics. The frontier wasn't just a line of defense, it was a zone of interaction. Markets at the major passes taxed trade traffic, monitored envoys, and sometimes exchanged Chinese grain for steppe horses. Where the maps show a barrier, the financial ledgers show bargains being made. And third, it misses the constant change over time. A key moment was the Tumu crisis in 1449, when the Ming emperor was captured by Mongol forces. After that disaster, the Ming rulers doubled down on fortifications near the capital, Beijing. They installed massive brick-faced keeps, crenels for archers, and artillery platforms for cannons. The wall became both a rampart and a powerful message of security, order, and imperial spectacle. The legacy of the Great Wall is that the frontier hardened and softened in cycles of war, negotiation, and migration. The simple one wall story completely hides this centuries-long conversation between the agricultural plains of China and the nomadic grasslands of the steppe. The real story is one of signals, markets, and memory. So to return to our original question, did Qin Shi Huang build the Great Wall? He began a network, but not the postcard. The magnificent brick sections you walk on today mostly speak of the Ming Dynasty, while the oldest lines whisper in earth and dust, slowly returning to the land. Myths shrink time, facts restore it. And speaking of Qin Shi Huang's ambition, Curious where it's most visible today? It's not on the windswept ridges, but deep underground, an entire army forged in clay guarding a silent tomb city. If the myth of the Great Wall fell under the light of evidence, what happens when we test the next one? Did the terracotta army really mirror a living, breathing legion? Thank you so much for watching. If you found this interesting, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into history. See you next time.